So guess what, everyone? Cyberpunk is in the news again today for both good reasons and for bad reasons. I'm going to be going over both of those things here in just a moment. Plus, get this, Far Cry 7 is already in the news. We're going to talk about what's happening with the next entry in the Far Cry franchise and should we already be worried? So we're going to dive into that in just a moment, but let's do this. I'm going to go over your top comments later. So remember, post a comment down below. It could always end up in a video. You never know. But first, we're going to start out with Cyberpunk 2077. So as you guys know from my previous video, if you missed it, check it out on the channel. Cyberpunk had a massive sell. It went from $60 to like $10 within the period of a year. Of course, that's for Black Friday sell, but that is such a significant cut. What was the result of this big sell? Let's find out. So today, Cyberpunk is sitting, I kid you not, in the #1 spot for top sellers on Steam. Check this out, ahead of Farming Simulator 2022. But it is ahead of some pretty heavy hitters, Red Dead Redemption 2, but that's been out forever. But Battlefield 2042 is in here, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Halo, Master Chief Collection. But you'll notice here on this list, there's not really something that is in the realm of Cyberpunk. If Starfield was out right now, it would be a very, very different story, I assure you. Of course, we got a bunch of remasters with GTA Trilogy and then Skyrim remaster, but those things are more console-based, I think. But yeah, it's good to see Cyberpunk back on the charts though, because what this means is that the player base has definitely increased for this game because of this sell, and it kind of preps it once again for the next gen update and yes, of course, expansion pack 1. You guys are probably scratching your head, the next gen update. Yes, the next gen update, remember, isn't just for PS5 or Xbox Series X, and while it is for those consoles, it is also going to be applied to the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077. So yes, that is something very significant to remember. Now, also we have some more good news because we have new players coming in. Because of this massive sell, we have new user reviews, which have really turned the tide for the overall rating for Cyberpunk 2077. Check it out right here. We have mostly positive rating here. 397,000 people have decided to vote that. And then for very positive with recent reviews, we have nearly 12,000 individual reviews right there. So people are really enjoying the game right now, especially recent players that have got into, which may actually encourage those that put the game down to actually revisit it. I don't know. Now, we do have some comments from the dev team about what's going on here. Check this out right here. This comes from Palisasco. He says, last days, Cyberpunk received a flood of very positive reviews on Steam from new players. You can't imagine what it means to me. And you can feel this sense of very much thankfulness. It's interesting because it's Thanksgiving, so it's a perfect timing here. And yeah, you know, it's good to see the developers, in my opinion, getting this type, I guess you would say, reward for their efforts they have put into updating Cyberpunk. Of course, they have a long way to go, don't get me wrong, and yes, the launch was horrible, but the developers were really caught up in the crossfire, in my opinion, and it is a shame. Now, also, we have this one right here. How many people are actually playing the game concurrently? We have 12,116 people in game. Now, this is nothing compared to the launch numbers. At one point, the game was up to like 1 million concurrent players, making it one of the most played games ever on Steam, despite the issues that it had. People were really trying to get in there and play and enjoy the experience. Now, we have something really interesting though. Despite somewhat, I would consider 12,000 concurrent players not anything to brag about, but we do have this right here, an upward trend on the Steam Game Hub followers chart for Cyberpunk, which means a lot of people are really, really interested in this game, despite the fact that they might not actually be playing it right now. Now, if we zoom in here, I wanted to show you guys this right here. This is really important. You can see the release date right here for Cyberpunk, that big uptrend, and it's been a gradual uptrend since the release of the game. You don't see a downtrend, which is really, really important. People aren't unfollowing from this Steam Gamers Hub page. But hopefully we see another big uptrend when we get to the next gen update, and of course, any big updates like free DLC and that big expansion. So we might see a second bigger uptrend. Now, we got to get into the bad stuff. related to this good news because there is a dark side to the story. So if we go in here, we can see that the peak player count has practically gone down pretty significantly since the release of the game. And again, it's been nothing to brag about. And the gain percentages have actually been in the negatives for that player peak. This can turn around very, very quickly. But again, I'm sure that CD Projekt Red wants those numbers to go higher and higher. Now, despite the fact that, of course, Cyberpunk is the top-selling game right now on Steam, what does it mean for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X? You better believe it, you know CD Projekt Red really wants those numbers to go up right now, considering everything is on sale for Cyberpunk. You would think you would see it in the top charts on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. That is not the case. Here's the best-selling PlayStation 5 games on Amazon. As you can see, Cyberpunk is nowhere to be found. Even if you dig into it throughout the page, it's interesting to see Deathloop is on there. That is awesome to see. I love to see new IPs and franchises succeed like this, so hopefully that means we will get a Deathloop 2, but that's cool. Also, if you go to the Xbox Series X games here, it's the same story. As you can see, no Cyberpunk whatsoever in the top-selling games that are going on right now. Could that change? Potentially. Maybe it's just falling behind and they don't have an update on Cyberpunk right now. But if we do go to the PlayStation storefront, we can see that Cyberpunk is nowhere to be found in the best sellers list. I've dug into this quite a bit, and you can go into page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and see that it's not in there whatsoever. That could also be because PlayStation doesn't want it in there. You know, CD Projekt Red and PlayStation have a very shaky relationship, to say the least. They've pulled their game before. But yeah, also right now, again, there's not much going on in the gaming space with open world RPGs like Cyberpunk. Of course, we have Halo Infinite coming up here. That does have open worldness to it. So that's the only game I can think right now coming up around holidays that could contend with Cyberpunk, perhaps. But Elden Ring is another one, but it's not like a futuristic shooter thing. So nothing like Cyberpunk to compete against it and to still, those Steam numbers. So that's one reason perhaps that Cyberpunk is seeing so much good sales right now. And that goes to show that's very smart that they did this, that they put the price tag at such a low price tag right now instead of waiting until later. So what I think they've done right now is super important. So check this out right here. This comes from What Up Bro, who says, who else feels really bad for the devs? This is by far one of the most talked about topics right now going on in the Cyberpunk community. It says, I recently picked up the game for $10 at GameStop. I opened it and there were stickers, a map, a book. I've never seen a standard edition game have this many free commodities. It even came with a free trial of HBO Max. I feel bad because it seems like they really wanted it to be something special. Mistakes happen, and I guess all we can do is wait for the updates. Do you feel the same way? Yes, the developers were definitely caught up in the crossfire, but also at the same time, they did say some misleading things themselves during the whole marketing period as well. But man, I really do feel for the developers right now because they were caught between the big head CEOs and, of course, you have to remember the investors trying to push this game out and all these artists, sound designers, script writers trying to get this game done. It's such a bummer. And you got to remember they were under tons of crunch apparently during the development of this game, and then to have it release and to have even more crunch thrown on them to try to get out updates as fast as possible really was not helping the situation at all, which I think that's why everything has been delayed for the next gen update. Hopefully to give some of these developers the breathing room they need to take a break, reset, and then come back into work and really hit it hard in 2022. At least that's what I hope their strategy kind of is right now, because yeah, it's probably been a really rough ride, especially for the dev team. Let me know if you really feel bad for this dev team or not. But it is time to get into the Far Cry 7 news right now. So let's do this. I love how they have this like third person mode, by the way, in the hub spaces. But check this out here. Far Cry creative director Dan Hay is leaving Ubisoft. He's already left. And it's interesting because this all happened around this rumor. It says Far Cry 7 is a live service game similar to Assassin's Creed Infinity. Infinity. And I know that raises a lot of alarms, and a lot of us are probably a little bit worried here right now about what's going to happen with Far Cry 7 because lead talent has left, and then we get this announcement that's turning to a live service game. What will happen? Now, it goes on to say this, says, as the next Far Cry game, reporter Jeff Grubb says it will be a live service game similar to the Assassin's Creed Infinity project. Far Cry 6 only just released in October, and Ubisoft has plans to support the game with lots of DLC and updates over time, so the company is unlikely to discuss any future projects anytime soon. Now, GameSpot has contacted Ubisoft for comment. Remember, sources in the description below if you want to further read into this. But I myself, I know that a lot of people have complained that Far Cry 6 feels too much like a similar experience compared to the previous Far Cry games, but I have really enjoyed it and have had a lot of fun with it. But it seems like they're trying to do something perhaps with building upon previous game entries, or even want to keep any type of releases they have released for Far Cry going. That's one of the problems they've run into with Assassin's Creed, is they have found that people are revisiting Assassin's Creed Unity. I mean, a lot of people, and then also Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they're like, we could still update that game. We could still keep that audience attached to Assassin's Creed, even if they're not playing like the newer Assassin's Creed. It seems like they're very interested in this Assassin's Creed right here. It seems like they're wanting to do that with Far Cry, and to me that sounds pretty cool. We'll see what happens though in terms of things like microtransactions and, you know, other monetization schemes that could potentially wiggle their way into a live service type experience, which is, of course, the biggest worry and the biggest fear. You better believe it. But yeah, now it's time to go over your top comments. Remember to leave a comment down below. It could end up right here in the video. So let's do this. Let's check out and see what you guys had to say about my most recent Cyberpunk 2077 video. So this is what was called very bad news, but it can also strangely save the game. And in this video, I talked about how Cyberpunk is now listed for $10 practically on every platform, and how that looks like really bad news. And trust me, it is. They would probably want it to be on sale for $50, $40 at the very least with this big of an open world experience. But it's also strangely good news because it brings in a large audience, a new audience, as we're seeing from the Steam reviews and things like that, that could potentially propel the expansion, the next gen update to newer levels. All right, so let's get into what you guys had to say about this right now. We have Kagaka 777, I think it is. Don't forget the fact that CD Projekt Red is hiring modders to help them fix and improve the game, while Rockstar was actively killing their mod community, which did far superior mods for GTA in favor of their crappy definitive edition. Yeah, so that's really the good news, is that yes, of course, we are going to be seeing modders helping out with, I don't know exactly what they're doing for Cyberpunk 2077, but they can bring a lot to the table for sure. But they're actually helping in some sort of official capacity, which is really cool to see. Now we have Ashish Timbakar. If I got the name wrong, I'm sorry. It says evil is evil, lesser, greater, middling. Make no difference. The degree is arbitrary. The definition blurred. If I'm to choose between one evil and another, I'd rather not choose at all. Wow. Let me just say, that's deep right there, man. All right, we have Xdrecky who says, nearly every game I've been excited for the last 2 years has been a pretty big disappointment. I know where you're coming from. Does this Cyberpunk was disappointing only because the hype that it was given, but I actually loved it and just started playing it with mods on a new high-end PC. It's incredible. Everything else though has sucked. Not sure why these companies, let me expand it. New games suck in comparison to games released years ago, but it's a trend now, apparently. Yeah, it's because people pre-order the game and they get their money, you know, and they don't have to do much after that. They get sued here and there, but they've made so much money that the lawsuits are like, no big deal. For the most part. Sometimes it just goes horribly wrong though. We have Shadow Avatar who says they need to redo the GTA trilogy, start again, and do it actual justice. That'll never happen. They're not going to start again. It's such a shame too, because it could have been absolutely huge. Like they could have done something massive with the GTA trilogy remaster. I mean, to think if they would have just went all in, like Mafia, the Mafia remasters, my God. Carol Baskin's husband says this: is CD Projekt Red intent on fixing the numerous bugs that are left? There's no word from CD Projekt Red. I just hope they haven't abandoned the idea of fixing the bugs for building DLC. So my assumption here, they have said that they're pretty happy with how the game sits in that regard. And now they're more focused on building new content. However, you're going to be seeing like updates alongside, I think, the next gen update that will address bugs and things like that. But right now they're more focused on building that new content and stuff like that. I've been doing an entirely new playthrough on PlayStation 5, and there are some bugs, but they're like kind of open worldish bugs that don't break the experience so far. Now, when the game first initially released, I was absolutely pissed off because it was bugs that were ruining main key story moments. Like, I was like, wow. And they weren't fixable for me at all for a long time. So yeah. All right, there it is. The latest happenings around Cyberpunk 2077. And yeah, we talked about Far Cry 7. Wasn't expecting to talk about that one today. Hopefully that one ends up really good. See what happens. But thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you all next time. Take care.